I'm sitting here today with our guest, Emil Kenita, who you might know from his Instagram, Baby Dilk. Dilks?
Dilf. Dilf.
Is it still Dilf?
Well, because I got canceled, I thought the X was just my way of saying I've been canceled. I just adding an X every time.
I mean, you know you've made it these days when you've been cancelled.
Truly.
Emil is a Melbourne-based artist with a focus on exploring sex through his art. He's also living with HIV and has spent the last few years pouring himself into HIV work and awareness. Emil, on Talking Frank, we always have a DM that's sent in by a listener that's a problem they've got or a story they want to share that's about something to do with the episode. And we've had this one sent in by a young lady who's asked to stay anonymous. So our producer, Sarah, is going to read it out. But yeah, shout if you have any reflections or if you want to pause it to discuss.
I'm 26 years old and I was diagnosed with HIV 6 years ago. I was on holiday with 4 of my best mates when I met the partner who infected me. It was a holiday fling and not anything that I had thought twice about. I mean, I knew we should have used protection, but I just figured it would be fine.
Okay, firstly for me, the term infected, that's the wrong language to use, right?
Yeah, so because infection kind of implies an intent. Very often now when people talk about this, they say they contracted it because when it comes to a sexual engagement with everyone, you're both agreeing to that, whatever that circumstances is. And as this said, I think it really kind of captured it in her message where she said, well, at this time, I thought we'll just go without the protection. So in that context, she consented to that situation.
Yeah, I think the term infection almost implies like it being premeditated.
Totally. And what we've come to learn over time is that, yeah, very often people who do have HIV just don't know they actually have it. So it's definitely a lot more nuanced and complex. And very often, yeah, it's just you've just connected with someone who doesn't even know.
I'll continue.
I started to feel sick a few months after my trip. I got headaches, a rash, and nausea. I thought it was a bug or something and that it would pass, but after 3 months, I found myself in hospital. I went into shock. I remember my mum and my sister then meeting me in hospital and everybody crying. To be honest, it's taken me 5 years to come to grips with my diagnosis properly. It was tough at the start not to isolate myself. For years, I self-sabotaged my relationship with my friends and potential partners because I struggled to cope with the stigma myself. But I've learned to look after myself much better now. I had to re-educate myself and be kinder to me.
You're like clapping along.
Love. I mean, it's sadly, like even to this day, the average person getting diagnosed with HIV tends to find out 3 or 4 years after they've contracted it.
Wow.
That's in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah. Because very often they're at the point where they're quite sick already. And people are finding out, usually doctors are finding out, be like, okay, well, we've done all the tests. What haven't we done? And then someone will be like, oh, what about HIV? That's usually how it goes. And like, structurally and culturally, we could really see this from just the lack of HIV awareness, the general HIV awareness that's happening, us being able to really think about HIV, not just affecting gay people. And in fact, it's kind of like the same discourse that we hear with sex workers, like the safest people you can have sex with are sex workers. And in so many ways, like, a lot of men who have sex with men, gay, bi folks, queer folks are actually getting tested, or very often getting tested at least once a year, every 3 months. And yeah, as some people I know, once every month, depending on how busy and popular they are.
It always shocks people when I tell them that stat about how many women have HIV in Australia. And it's not like a, gotcha, women get it as well. But the stigma that we have that, even this young lady that sent in her message, like she's just a young girl on holiday who's now living with HIV.
Yeah.
I'm now on HIV treatment and there is effectively no risk of me even passing on the virus or anything like that. I play sports, I graduated from uni, I work full-time as an artist. I'm the same as any other girl. Remember that HIV doesn't discriminate.
Yes, queen. Oh my God, I'm kind of hating myself for using that term, but I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up though, that, there are so many treatments available and they're all world-class. Even the preventative medications, like pre-exposure PrEP.
PEP. Yes. So like a great way to kind of like remind people about it. So PEP, PEP is the morning after pill for HIV. So that if you think you're at risk, you have up to 72 hours, so 3 days to go to any emergency department and ask for PEP. And then PrEP is kind of being on the pill, but it's for HIV prevention. I know women, straight men, queer folks who are on it and not having that anxiety and worry. I think the best way to actually approach sexual health is one, if you are sexually active, even if you're using condoms, assume that STI is just a normal part of an active sex life. You know, like very often you don't even get sick, like getting the flu from meeting another person, you know. So an STI really, if you think about it, is such a non-event. But also at the same time, there's just different ways of actually how to prevent it, like just doing regular testing, making it as a normal part of, you know, like how you just maintain yourself. There's so many other ways that you can do for yourself to actually just destigmatize yourself from STI and HIV, more importantly.
Yeah, I mean, she was lucky. She said she got tested a few months after her trip. So, you know, lucky to catch it and seek treatment early, I reckon.
Well, even the ones that we do come across now, like, you know, like I know one guy whose immune system was so low, basically, it was close to zero, like the T cells that they count in terms of measuring how strong your immune system is basically close to zero. And within a matter of months, they were able to get him to what they call undetectable, which is practically what the women said. It's like, you know, you get to this point where HIV treatment, where it's so effective now. Some clinicians and community advocates are even calling it a functional cure to HIV, because if you think about it, you can have children. You know, like you live as long as everyone else. The studies now are saying that people like me could live up to 80, 90. You know, so it's just so much of how we've conceptualized HIV still very much rooted to 40 years of trauma.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when it comes to something as traumatic as an HIV epidemic, it's just not as easy as saying to someone, look, we've got this change, but it's such a, you know, like it's really learning to bring along each and everyone through that journey. And I think even having these small discussions could really help people get there.
Well, thank you for sending that DM in. And if you want to share your story or if you have a question, you too can slide on into the DMs.